Jimmy ALECK. Jimmy?
Thank you. As Johnny said, my name is Jimmy ALECK, and I'd like to find something out from the audience before I begin. How many people own 1982 automobiles? How many of you? Well, don't worry, we'll get you a ride home after the show, no problem. I don't know how you feel about them, but I get the feeling that new cars are kind of a ripoff. I mean, you get the feeling estimated miles per gallon and what you actually get is very similar to salary and take-home pay. You get that feeling? I'm originally from Chicago, and are you from Chicago, really? Yeah, big deal. Very dangerous to drive in Chicago, especially in the winter, because people give you such stupid advice. Like if you're driving in a snowstorm and your car starts to slide all over the road, you know what people tell you to do? It's the truth. They'll tell you to turn your wheels in the same direction that you're sliding. I'm sliding towards a ditch. That's like telling someone, you see a semi coming head on, floor it. I drive a Volkswagen, and people who drive Volkswagen, you drive a Volkswagen, again, big deal. I don't really care. But people who drive Volkswagens have a serious problem. We think we own a Corvette. Have you ever seen us drive? We're kind of, and we're only going 10 miles an hour. We got Orson Welles jogging past us here. And I think there are too many restrictions now when you drive. 55-mile-an-hour speed limit? Come on. I parallel park at 55 miles an hour. I can't afford a new car because I'm in debt. And I'm in debt for one real good reason. Visa. I'll never forget my first Visa card. I had a $1,000 limit. I was all excited. $1,000. In a week, I spent $2,700. And you know what they do when you spend that much money in a week? They raise your limit. It's like the company saying, oh, yeah? Well, I'll bet you can't spend $5,000. I'm in big trouble with credit cards, though. As a matter of fact, Carl Malden just called me. He told me to leave home without it. Of all the bills I receive, though, the one that really bothers me is the phone bill. And I hate it because they list all the calls that you made. And every month, there's always a number on there you know you didn't make. So what do? You call the number. You find out you did make it, now you made it twice. I always get ripped off, though. You know who takes advantage of me? Car mechanics. Because I have no knowledge of the automobile. And if you're ignorant about the car, don't ever let the mechanic know this. The other day, I made a big mistake. I went up to this mechanic, and I said, excuse me, sir, could you take a look at my car? I think it's broke. I could see Hawaiian Vacation written all over this guy's face. The man was getting tanner in front of my eyes. It was... You won't believe what my girlfriend did. She brought her car in to get it fixed. Guy asked her what kind of car she had. She told him green. Mechanics were parachuting into the parking lot. And I don't mean to make fun of women there, because I really believe women are much better prepared for the world than men are. Like, well, sure, go ahead, yeah. Like when I was growing up, I was never taught housework. That was girl stuff. I was taught things like baseball. Very useful now that I live on my own, huh? So much easier to cook when you know how to bunt. But I'm learning to do domestic things, you know. I'm learning. Like it used to be, button falls off my jacket, I used to just leave it off. Now I know, button falls off, sew up the hole. Sometimes I get the feeling women don't appreciate a good sense of humor, though. Like, take a girl to a drive-in. When she goes to the washroom, move the car. They don't think that's too funny, you know? You know what really bothers me? What bothers me is when people use silly cliches all the time. Like I do not like to fly. So what do I hear to comfort me all the time? People are always telling me, safer to fly than to drive your car. Now, this could be true, but when my car engine stalls, I don't fall 40,000 feet. You know what really frightens me about airplanes, though? The black box. You know what that is? That's where they put the flight recording. Have you ever noticed? Whenever there's a bad accident, the first thing they recover is the black box. You can't destroy this thing. I want to know, what is the black box made from, and why don't they make planes out of the same material? You know? Because I'll tell you, whenever they ask me where I want to sit, I tell them, in the black box. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Doc. We got as sometimes happened on the show, we ran a little long with our sketch tonight, and we had Cindy Morgan to come out, who's a lovely young girl, but we only have about 3 minutes. So we asked her to come back to be with us next week, which she was kind enough to say she would. So we thought we'd bring Jimmy ALECK out, the young man that you just saw. He was very, very funny. Jimmy? Good to see you.
Well, I'm glad that's over with, boy. Well, I'll tell you, because, of course...
That's funny stuff, you do.
Oh, thank you.
You know, I knew you were on with David. You haven't been on with me, but you were on with David one night.
Right, and I got bumped once.
Did you get bumped?
I got bumped once, and...
that means that you don't get on.
You know, I called my mom. Like, my mom calls everybody when
Yeah.
I'm on the show, and so I called her, and I says, Mom, I got bumped. She goes, well, who bumped into you? I said, no, Mom, it means I didn't get on the show. She says, well, give me Johnny Carson's number. I said, no, you can't call him.
They do. That's always a thing that I feel awkward about, because when Flip Wilson first did this show, it's a famous story that Flip now uses in his act. He came one night, he was booked on the show, sat in the green room, never got on. It was 5 times it happened to him.
Oh.
And he's made a whole piece of material out of not getting on the show. You know, you get all geared up to come
Right.
out and do your stuff, and then you have to kind of pull
Well, you know,
back.
to be on with David was comfortable, you know, because he's a friend of mine.
Right.
Now, of course, every comedian dreams of being on with Johnny Carson, you know, so as you're introducing me backstage, little things are running through my head like, you sure you want to be a comedian? I mean, you could go caddy back in Chicago. It's not bad. It's,
Is that where you started in school? Back there?
Well, I started back in Chicago. I used to work, in fact, I used to work for a television station, WGN. I used to write Bozo Circus skits for those people from Chicago.
You're kidding.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah,
and,
most of the comedians who came out of the Midwest came out of either radio stations, television, or small clubs like that.
Right, I went to college. I went to Bloomington, Indiana. I went to Bobby Knight University down there where we...
Bobby Knight
University?
I get the feeling you write a lot of your stuff. I mean,
Well, most of it I do.
Most of it,
every once in a while, though, I'll get a little money together, because writers are pretty expensive, as you know.
Yep.
And I'll bring some jokes to some friends of mine who are writers, and I'll say, hey, you guys, what do you think of these jokes I wrote? And they'll go, well, it's not bad, Jimmy, but... and they sometimes will punch them up for me, which is nice that they'll do that for me.
What's the worst experience you've ever had when you started? We've all had those when you start. You go out and you think you've got some really great jokes, and all of a sudden, tragedy sets in.
Well, you know, I opened for a lot of rock groups when I started out, and rock groups I've never heard of. Like, now they're pretty big. Head East, they're a pretty big, heavy rock and roll group. And I asked someone, I said, what's Head East like? Before I went out, I want to know what kind of material to do. They said, well, they're kind of like Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. I said, well, that's nice, kind of a mellow rock. I should do well. So I go in there to meet the guys before the show, and they're like putting on tights and putting makeup on their face. I'm going, this is not Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young.
And the audience that they...
The audience was chanting Head East. They don't want a comedian on the show.
As soon as you walk out there, hey, music.
And they go and opening the show, they go, what?
It's the worst spot in the world. That is tough. If you have to open for rock acts, and you got 50,000 kids out there, and you got to come out and be funny.
Oh, yeah, there's quite a few of them out there, too. And you know, I met Ed recently. I get a lot of experience. I play a lot of golf.
Right.
So I play a lot of celebrity golf tournaments. And we played in the Doug Sanders tournament in Houston. And Bob Hope was there, Jack Carter, and Joey Bishop, and Ed, and all kinds of... Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
And the guy comes up to me in my foursome. These guys pay like $1,000 to play with a pro and a celebrity. The guy comes up to me and goes, by the way, my friend's playing with Bob Hope. Who's our celebrity?
And you're saying,
I said, I'm Jimmy Hope, Bob's kid. So he... It made them feel a little more...
You're on the way to overcoming that. Next tournament, they'll know. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.